Hi everybody, and welcome to the little introduction tutorial to the GPA, or the grade point average. So most of you will be new to this system. Some of you will be new to school, and this is your first real opportunity to do any sort of reporting. I'm sure you learned about it in all your varying degrees or courses. So basically this session is just going to walk you through a bit of theory behind the GPA, what it is, what it looks like, and then I'm going to show you on my compass how to actually get into it, get started, and get it done. So we might as well get started. So what is the GPA? It's the grade point average, and basically it's a reporting mechanism where students' levels of effort and application are measured. So we're not really looking at the grades they got or anything like that. We're dialing down into some key learning habits, okay? So the learning habits or learning behaviors that we're looking at, there's 5 of them this time around. Later on we'll add achievement, but we'll talk to you about that when it comes around, so you don't have to worry about that just yet. So basically we're looking at arrives equipped and prepared to work. So do they bring all their stuff? Have they got their laptops? Is it charged? Have they got their pens? Have they got their pencils? All that kind of stuff. Participates constructively and remains on task. I'm sure you can get your head around what these statements mean. Completes and submits tasks by the due date. Follows instructions and respects others' learning, and also responds positively to feedback. Okay, so you have to start thinking about these students that you have in your classes and their behaviours, not necessarily what they got in their last test or anything like that, but how they conduct themselves as learners. So how is it measured? Each learning behaviour is marked out of 4, and you have to think of it like this: always, usually, sometimes, rarely, and never. One way that I like to think about it when I've done this in the past, and you might want to talk to some colleagues about how they do it to get a sense of the process that they go through. In terms of bringing their equipment to class, for example, I like to think of it, is that kid, if we had 4 sessions in a row, 4 classes in a row, does that kid bring it every single time? If I had 8 in a row, do they bring it every single time? If they do, then they're at a 4. If they bring it, if they rarely but occasionally forget their laptop or it's not charged or something like that, then they get a usually. Then you go down to the kid that never has a laptop or never has pens or never has their textbook or whatever. So try and think of it over a series of 4 classes or 8 classes, how many times that student would bring the appropriate equipment, or how many times that student would be on task, and try and gauge it off that number. That's the best way that I can suggest. You might want to talk to Sean, who'll be hosting the question and answer session on Wednesday. He might have a slightly different viewpoint on that. But basically, we're looking for consistency across the room and across the board. So you want to try and think of it in terms of, the way that you can measure it. So if there's over 8 classes, have they brought it all the time? Well, that would be always for that kid. It will be identical for each subject and each student across all year levels. So all kids from 7 to 12 get the same behaviours that they're all dealing with. Okay, so you don't have to think too much outside the square with these. So what do the kids get? Well, you can see there, for example, we've got a year 10 student, and on the left there you can see their subjects, and across the middle you can see all the different responses, so always, sometimes, never. Now on the far right column, the average, so this student, for example, for coffee and cake, their GPA is a 3 out of 4. Okay, that's pretty good. For English, 4 out of 4, brilliant. Maths, this student is struggling, okay, for one reason or another. So we can see that, okay, pretty clearly. And the rest are somewhere around 3s, 4s, except PE and pathways, they're struggling a little bit as well. If we look down the bottom, it's pretty clear to see that this student struggles across all subjects with constructively participating and remaining on task. That's one of the issues that this kid has across as a learning behaviour, that's one of the weakest areas. This student is very strong at responding to feedback, also does quite well with bringing their equipment to class and putting their tasks in on the due date. But this student, across the board, we can start to track the idea that in terms of participating in class and also following instructions, they are struggling. Down the bottom right hand corner, you can see the overall average across the whole subjects and learning behaviours, and that student's GPA number will be a 3. Okay, averaging it all out. So one of the things that students can do over the course of the semester or the year is they can start to track their GPA. They'll be able to track it from last year, how they were travelling, and across this year. So that last student, you might be able to track, or a student for example, is that you can see across here cycle 1, cycle 2 and cycle 3 how this student improved in cycle 2 but then kind of plateaued out towards cycle 3. So that's valuable information that various people in the school can use, but it's also really powerful to be able to talk to the student about that tracking. So who does use the data? Well, of course, the class teachers are able to use that data. You might notice a pattern. You might want to ask yourself, what does the data show you as the class teacher? What are some learning behaviours that you might have to start talking about explicitly about the importance of bringing equipment to class, the importance of submitting work on time, or the importance of being involved in classroom activity. So class teachers can definitely use that, which is important. Tutorial teachers, this is going to be a really valuable tool if you have a tutorial at any level. Built into the tutorial system is some reflection with the students about their GPA, how they're travelling, their learning behaviours. You'll also be able to monitor their progress across the cycles, which will be important for you to really get a sense of who your students are, where they're improving, or where maybe some kids are dropping off, and that might set some alarm bells off for you. Of course, the year level program leaders will be tracking this data so they can identify changes in behaviour. They can also start to set relevant goals for the kids that's built into the tutorial program, and they also might have to put in place some interventionist strategies if some kids are dropping really, really low. And of course, parents are expected to discuss this data with their child and continue to reflect on how their kid is going. So this kind of replaces the old end of term interim report. So when can you start it? Well, you can start it now. You could have started it yesterday if you had the confidence, but don't panic. You can dive into this immediately. As long as you remember that they have to be all filled in by Thursday the 6th of March, so just before we head off to Swimming Carnival. Okay, so what we're going to do now is, now that you've got an understanding of kind of what it is and what it's for and who uses it, we're going to just quickly dive into how to get into it, how to get started, and how to actually do the reports. And I think it will alleviate a bit of stress if you've got any, because it's really quite a simple process. Okay, so here we are. We're in Compass. You can see here you have this lovely little warning sign telling you have outstanding reports. And the easiest thing for you to do is just to click right there. And the internet will work. Everybody will be happy. There we go. Your reports appear in front of you in here. They tell you in this section how many students you've got left to report on, and once the reports are done, that will appear there in Students Done. So I'm going to show you how to do this. I'll do a class, not properly, but just so you get a sense of how it works. So I'm going to take my Year 10 International Legal and Politics class, and here are all my little cherubs. You can see them all down here. So what we do is we say, there are a number of ways to do it. It's completely up to you how you attack it. You have the learning behaviour across the top. Okay, you have the student's name over here on the left, and then you have a drop-down box which gives you the ranking that you're going to give that student for the learning behaviour. So for example, we've got Aaron over here. Let's just say that Aaron always brings his equipment to class. He always completes work by the due date. He usually follows instructions, and he usually remains on task, but he's not very good at responding to feedback. He likes to do things his way, and that's the only way. Okay, so what we have there is his profile for his learning behaviours in my class. Okay, now if you've got a class that you think functions really, really highly, so you've got maybe a junior class that is super organised and loves bringing all their equipment to class, then you can use this fill down option. It's quite popular. So the fill down option allows you to fill out all of this. One strategy I know that people use is they would say, well, you know what, most of my kids bring their equipment to class most of the time, so I'm going to give everybody usually. Now, what I can then do is I can go down the list and say, well, you know what, Matty always brings his stuff, but Zach, he never brings his stuff. Okay? So as long as you feel like that accurately represents each student, that's one option that you may take. And it's as simple as that. So you can, I suggest that you don't do fill down, fill down, fill down, because that will be very noticeable and also very difficult to explain, of course, to some of the year level program leaders. So don't do that as a default setting, but it's a great place to start if you think most of your kids fall in that kind of area. So you can see once we've filled them down, I've got the average, Aaron's average is 320. I've got lots of kids doing a 3.2 because I did a lot to fill down, but then you've got a couple of kids like Matthew who's at 3.4. I've also got Madeline, who's an always, and you can see there that her GPA for my subject is 4. Okay, once you've done that, hit the save button. Successfully saved. Then I can back to my reporting home screen, and you can see there that they've changed. I have no students pending, and I have 22 students that are done. Okay, if at any point I think about it, I sleep on it, and I go, you know what, I don't think that's right, you can just click back in. Go internet. And you can do any amendments that you see fit. You have the ability to go back in and amend as many times as you want. Oops, I have to save those changes. So I go down, I click save. You can have the opportunity to change those as many times as you like before the 6th, the end close of business on the 6th. Because the close of business on the 6th is when I close the system down and you can make no more changes. Once you've completed all of your reports, this will disappear. Okay, so you know that all your reports are done. And that's about it. It's really not a laboursome task. It is about knowing your students, and that's the important thing. So once you know your students and you are aware of what they're doing, then you can fill this in quite easily. So best of luck. Try and get it done sooner rather than later. Now that you know that you have to report against a few behaviours, you might notice a bit more over the course of the week, which is fine. And then you can start to track those kids and then report on them appropriately. If you have any questions, or if you have any difficulty getting on the system, which hopefully you don't, you can talk to Sean on Wednesday night, or you can email me. Unfortunately, I won't be at school on Thursday and Friday, but I'm sure you'll be able to handle this. Most people in the school will have already done it. As I said, talk to your colleagues and get them to talk you through it. Okay? If you're watching this video and you are asking yourself, how did he make this video? By all means, come and ask me about that as well. On a Mac-based system, there's a lovely program called ScreenFlow, which is what I'm using now, and I use this to set up PowerPoints and give information to my kids. There is also another one called Camtasia for PC, and they're great little learning tools that you can use to just have different ways of transferring information. So if you're interested in learning more about how to make videos like this, please just email me. Otherwise, all the best, and I'll see you next week. See you later.